Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am Nika Sewell-Smith, a senior story producer here at Ancestry, and I will be your host for today's webinar. So let's talk about Journey to Freedom, newspapers.com articles of enslavement articles. All right, what is it? Okay, so this particular collection was put together using machine learning, and that might sound sort of scary to some of you, but hold on. It just listen to exactly what it is. We basically trained a computer to go through millions of pages of newspaper articles that are on newspapers.com and to identify particular newspaper articles that relate to enslaved people. And once that was done, we captured the details and put them into a separate index that lives on Ancestry. And so I have to say this at the beginning, you can get access to the enslavement articles both on newspapers.com and on Ancestry. In the Ancestry iteration, it is the index. And again, we're going to go through the collection live so you can see how it works both on newspapers.com and on Ancestry. You'll see the thumbnail on the Ancestry iteration. You can click that, it'll take you to newspapers.com. The index, again, is free. Access to the images of the newspaper articles is free on Ancestry and as well as on newspapers.com. So this is how this collection kind of came about. Now, when you're on the Ancestry version, again, you can click the thumbnail of the actual article and it will take you to the digitized page on newspapers.com. And that was super important to us for us not to just cut out the article and not leave it in its original context. It's important for us to have done that. Reason being because you really get an opportunity to see um, uh-oh, hopefully I'm not muted. Okay. You get an opportunity to see where the article was published, when it was published, and what it was published around it. For some of these things that you all will find in this collection, one of the most arresting for me was noticing all of the ads around the enslaved that are around the ad that I was looking for, or noticing what else was being advertised on that exact page. I've seen articles where they're in a page where like they're sort of surrounded by other auctions and other things where there are more than 200 enslaved people being auctioned off on the same page. I've seen, ads for everything from clothing to a number of different things. And so again, leaving the article in its original context instead of, cutting it out or clipping it out, was super important to us, in order for us to make sure that we did that. All right. So, again, when you click on the link in the newspapers.com version of Articles of Enslavement, there's no subscription required. All you need is a registered account on Ancestry, and it will take you to the actual image of the record. Okay. Now, if you've been with Ancestry for a while, you have already encountered collections that were put together in similar fashions. If you've ever used the newspapers.com birth index or the newspapers.com obituary index or the newspapers.com marriage index or one of the largest collections that we have on Ancestry, the newspapers.com stories and events index, the same methodology or the same way of putting together those collections is the way that we did this for Articles of Enslavement. So where we focused on births for the birth index, where we focused on obituaries for the obituary index, where we focused on marriages in the marriage index, or stories and events for that index, we are focusing on the enslaved in this one. All right, so again, free, free, free. Want to keep pointing that out today. The coverage of these enslavement articles go from 1787 to 1867. So that's a broad, broad time period. It's in the United States only at this particular point in time. There are more than 150,000 articles that are a part of this collection and more than 360,000 enslaved people who are named within this collection. Now, in addition to that, there are nearly 700 newspapers that are a part of the collection. So we're talking about a grand size. The update that was issued or put out this year, last month, was to build on the collection because it was initially released last year. So last year, we had about half of the number of enslaved people who are now in the collection. That was what was released last year. Now we've more than doubled that number. in a year's time because we've added more, we've updated the collection. What types of articles are included? At this particular time, it's auctions and fugitive slave ads or freedom seeker ads. Those are what are included. So an auction would be, let's say, an enslaver's estate is insolvent and they need to auction off enslaved people, or they need to auction off property, which includes enslaved people. So you'll find those auctions, or just auctions in general from slave traders. You will find that. Fugitive slave ads, that would mean that formerly or an enslaved person chose to seek their freedom and they ran away from their slaveholder, and the slaveholder will be placing an ad. Or you could see where a sheriff or a jailer would have found an enslaved person and had an enslaved person and advertised in the newspaper that that enslaved person was being held by them, and for their slaveholder to come and to claim them. Things that are mentioned within these ads, they vary depending on the type of ad, the type of paper. With that said, they may include obviously the name of the enslaved person and details. And when we're talking about details, we're talking about height, weight, complexion, what the person was wearing. Some of those things can be included in the articles, the name of the slaveholder and details about those slaveholders. I've seen ads where there are the enslaved person is a freedom seeker or a fugitive slave, and they were the property of one estate. So that slaveholder was named, and then it's mentioned that they were sold to another person, and that slaveholder was named, and that there was a third person involved. And all those three slaveholders are in three different locations. I've even seen where they're like in multiple states. So you have to think, how else would you potentially find this article unless you had all of the information for all of those people? It's again, this is why this is so important and so groundbreaking, is because it really decentralizes the whole idea of enslavement. Instead of it being, oh, well, I'm corralling everything to this one little geographic area. In reality, we have to realize this was an American institution, which meant that it was pervasive and it was existing all across the country, which then means that just because your folks may have been from Missouri, it doesn't mean that stuff around enslavement in that county in Missouri was not published in newspapers in Arkansas. You will see that. You will see the national nature of enslavement within this collection. Locations, super important, again, because I'm finding where there are auctions and fugitive slave ads in this collection where like the newspaper they're being printed in is not the state that the auction or the fugitive was from. Like it's like multiple locations. It's super interesting when you start digging into this. Just be curious. That's one of the things. If you're not really quite sure exactly how to jump into this and you're like, you know what? I don't know like where to start. One of the easiest things you can do is literally just sit and browse. And just kind of take it in. And then once you kind of learn it from that perspective, then it might help you kind of jump off and figure out what, again, just what's what. Relationships, that's another thing that is so important in this collection. Not every set of records of enslaved people includes relationships. Even things like an inventory of property. You might see family groups and you know that they are family groups because you've got a male name, a female name, and a mix of male and female names. Or in some inventories, they'll say John, and then they'll say Mary, his wife, and their children. But not every record has those relationships. Sometimes they're inferred. And the only way that you know that they are those particular relationships is if you have additional documents that confirm those relationships. Within some of these articles of the enslaved, you will see relationships. It will mention husbands and wives. It will mention mothers and their children. It will mention those types of things. Again, key details, especially when you're trying to reconstruct family groups that have been torn apart by this horrible institution that you might not be able to get anything anywhere else. And again, this is just high level. These are just the top highlights of the types of things that you can find in the articles of enslavement. So let's talk about the top 10 publishers, because some of you might be like, well, which locations, which newspapers are included in this? Note, the most important thing in me providing this list of top publishers, you all, is that what you're looking at is literally a reflection of the slave trade in the United States. You're literally looking at it. What do I mean by that? These are all places that you would expect to see and reflected largely in this collection. Why? Because New Orleans, Richmond, Columbus, Charleston, Augusta, these are all places that had heavy, heavy, heavy slave trade. They are hubs. And so that's the thing to keep in mind is that it's going to look like this with the top 10 publishers because of the nature of the slave trade. So we should see New Orleans having the most number of records. And we should see Richmond having the second most. We should see Columbus. We should see Charleston. And you'll note, again, because these are different publication names, but it's the same city. So all it's doing, again, is reflecting the nature of the slave trade. What may be a surprise to some of you is to see Vicksburg, Mississippi so high. But because I do research on the Mississippi Delta, this does not surprise me or shock me in any way, shape, or form. No, it does not. Especially when you factor in heavy slave trade locations like the Forks at the Road in places like Natchez, Mississippi, which is not too far from Vicksburg, or the fact that, again, in order to traffic individuals, enslaved individuals from a place like New Orleans up to a spot like maybe a Memphis or maybe a Lexington or wherever else, you had to go through another spot on the river. That's Vicksburg, that's Natchez. Right. So there's a question right now. Knowing which newspapers in the Ancestry collection were Black owned would also be very helpful. Most of these were after 1867. Right. That's very true. But in the context of what we're talking about, there were Black newspapers prior to emancipation, but they weren't likely going to be capturing auctions and freedom seeker ads. Most of those newspapers existed as an organ with which to communicate about freedom, about the lives of free people of color. They're not going to participate in the slavery economy in that way. So when we're talking about, again, enslavement, we're looking at these hubs. We're not necessarily looking towards Black papers to advertise fugitive slave ads or auctions. We're looking to them to tell the stories of the people who were in the auctions and the fugitive slave ads, to give life and humanity to them. Um, all right, more cities, okay, because those were the top publishers. Now we talk about the top cities mentioned. Because again, remember, I told you that just because an article might be in one location does not necessarily mean that everyone who was mentioned in it was from the place that the newspaper was published in. So when we juxtapose the top 10 publishers with the top 10 locations, what do you all notice, those of you who were here live? How does that shift and change? Because we still have the same states. The same states are still there. Right. It's in the South. Um, we shift a little bit, right? Ports, exactly. Great comment. Port cities, you all. If we went back to the top 10 publishers, we're talking port cities, cities that are close to water, close to the Atlantic Ocean. You're thinking about the downward migration of enslaved people, right? From the upper South to the lower South, people being taken from Virginia and the Carolinas and then brought by land or unfortunately walked that distance and taken to a larger city like a New Orleans, like a Nashville, like a Macon, like a Vicksburg, like a Richmond. Okay. And thank you, Paul, for sharing that link in terms of Black newspapers. Did you all know that newspapers.com has a Black newspaper specific search? And this is totally aligned with what we're talking about today. Thank you so much for my colleague for posting that in the chat because I love that. Total side note, you all, we recently digitized and made the Chicago Defender available on newspapers.com. And this is a game changer. Why? Because Chicago Defender was a national distribution black newspaper like the Pittsburgh Courier, like the Atlanta World, like the Baltimore Afro American, and it covered national black news. So just because the newspaper was in Chicago does not necessarily mean that it only covered Chicago. So I highly suggest. Again, here you all giving, you're getting extra game, right? You came here for the articles of enslavement, and I'm telling you about that, but I'm also giving you extra game around newspapers.com. Yes, you do. You got to use it, okay? Please be sure to click the link in the chat. It's Black History Newspapers.newspapers.com. That's how you get to that link, okay? And it will search just black papers. Yes, I'm telling you, I've been getting my whole life on the Chicago Defender. Yes. Thank you. There are folks who I know who are in the chat who, when I told them about this, they started using it, and now they're in there giving their praise reports about the fact that we have this. Oh, love it, love it, love it. So top 10 cities, okay? We should see New Orleans, we should see Charleston, we should see Richmond. Vicksburg, of course, because of what we just saw in terms of publishers. Columbus, Natchez, Mississippi. I'm so glad, especially with this update, you all, because I constantly stay talking about the role of Mississippi and Louisiana in the slave trade. And oftentimes people fully recognize the role of Virginia in the slave trade, but they in South Carolina, but they don't always give light to the fact that Mississippi and Louisiana had as large of a role as it did. So again, this slide with the top 10 cities is totally giving credence to that. Raleigh's role. I have a really good friend who did a really good study on Raleigh and the fact that it's kind of understated in terms of its role in the slave trade. Augusta, even Nashville, Tennessee. Okay. Again, notice what's in the top 10. All right. Now, how do we access this? Okay, because I've given you all the background. The collection, again, the index is on Ancestry, but you can also access the collection on newspapers.com. Okay, so you can get to it two different ways. We're going to go into both. Use what works best for you. I am a newspapers.com stan. Okay, everyone that knows me knows that I love, love, love. And I will say that my connection to it becomes because I was an editor of my college paper. Okay, so I know what it takes to put that one issue out that everyone is scanning through very quickly to get to finds for their ancestors. And I just value newspapers so much. I think, again, because of my own experience working in the press in college and in high school. So, again, if you do not have a newspapers.com subscription and you're trying to access articles of enslavement, it is okay because articles of enslavement, the articles are free. The index is free on Ancestry. All you need is a registered account. That's it. I think there was a question in the chat. Does the ranking on the list mean that New Orleans had more records because more people escaped to New Orleans? No. What it means is based on our model identifying news articles and based on them being indexed and the information in the articles being indexed, that particular city came up the most. That's what that means. Based on the model, selecting the articles, and then us. And that's the other thing I have to also mention is that even though we used a computer to identify the articles, humans index the information that's in the articles. So a computer did not index the information. Okay? A human did. And by virtue of that human going in and typing it in and keying it in and putting the pertinent information, that is what surfaced New Orleans more than any other city. And again, I don't recall that New Orleans had the top billing the last time, again, when the collection first came out last year, but it does now, and I am glad that it did. All right, so now we're going to move to my little live demo so you all know how to get access to articles of enslavement on Ancestry as well as on newspapers.com. All right. Okay, here we are in here live. So where we are right now is we are on the landing page for articles of enslavement. This will give you a really great overview. If there's certain aspects of what I've shared with you today that you are maybe you're trying to find it later and you can't get to it or whatever, pretty much everything that I talk about is going to be here. Thank you for the live comment because I'm glad someone else said it and I didn't have to say it. And I'll say this for anyone who's watching the recording. New Orleans was the largest slave market in the United States during the antebellum period, the years before the Civil War. Yes, times 10. I always say that. Um, there's another question. Will we get hints from the articles of enslavement? No. The way that this collection is set up, it's not set up to where it's within the system as it exists right now. But if that is a feature that you want, if you want to get hints on this, suggest it, right? You have a voice. Say that you want to, right? It's possible, but not at current. It is not. All right. So here we are, 150,000 plus articles. Okay. One of the things that you can look at is there's several links on this page. The first one that I'm clicking is to a blog post written by Bethany Bell that goes through an exploration of the things that you can find in the respective articles. Be sure to check that out through the link that I just provided in the chat. And so there's that. There's also our PDF African American Research Guide. So if you are new to genealogy and family history, you can go ahead and check that out in terms of helping you begin your start in your family history journey. How are you building out your tree? What would you potentially encounter when you get to the antebellum or the slavery time period, and how to work around those challenges? This collection that we're talking about today, Articles of Enslavement, is one of the ways that you can work around those challenges. And then when you scroll down just a little bit below this green line, you're going to see there's a box here or a space here for where to begin. Now, one of the things that you can do is you can also click this link, and this will take you to the newspapers.com version of Articles of Enslavement. And so I'm going to put this link in the chat so you all have this available as well. Okay. So you can get to it from the Articles of Enslavement landing page. You can get to the collection through newspapers.com. If you're on the main newspapers.com website, at least at this juncture, you can scroll down a little bit. And if you notice, you see it's right here on the logged in page. Okay. See where it says discover hidden stories of enslaved people in newspapers? It's right on right there. Okay. So you can get to it there as well. Once you click that learn more, you'll get to this respective page where it gives you a breakdown of what's happening. And this particular search, again, is more conducive to searching on newspapers.com. You can add in whether you want the auction of the fugitive ad, the age of the individual, the gender identity, the race. And that's another thing. Some of you may be shocked to see that there's a race of American Indian on here, but that, again, you have to remember, enslavement wasn't just people of African descent in the United States. It was not just that. Even things like height. So let's say you wanted to just do a cursory look of enslaved people who are over 6'5". You could actually limit your search to that on the newspapers.com version, along with abilities and skills. You can limit your search to that as well. Some of you may be like, how do they know? Because it's mentioned in the article. These, again, this is why this is such an important collection, is because instead of just getting a name and an age and a dollar value, you're actually getting qualities and characteristics of these folks so that you can dig more into their lives. What was it like to be an enslaved blacksmith? What was it like to be an enslaved carpenter or a painter or a domestic? What was that like? You can also search by designated role as an enslaved person, enslaver, or seeker, as well as the respective states. And some of these states that you see on here, you might be shocked, like, why is there mention of New York? Well, because there was slavery in New York. Why is there mention of Delaware? Because there was slavery in Delaware, right? Now, this, again, I'm telling you all, you're going to be shocked because every time I go through this collection, I find something new every single time. And again, I've been around this for a while. So if I'm still finding new things, you are still going to find new things. All right. So this is the newspapers.com version. Here, we're going to go back to the landing page. I was so insistent to our team that we have a map for this collection. And the reason why I wanted a map is because I wanted people to see the scale of what we're talking about. I wanted you to just, again, if you didn't know where to search, I wanted you to see the scale. Okay. And so the darker the green, the more records. So if you notice, there's over 700,000 individual records in this collection. The 360,000, that's just the names of the enslaved, but there's over 250,000, over 500,000, okay, records in this collection. So here's the thing. Some of you may be like, oh, well, look, it's at the location, it's at the country level. No, if you zoom in, notice again, the darker it is, the more records there are. And then you can zoom in even more. So if we go down to my favorite place, Louisiana, you can actually look by county or parish. Have you all done this? Again, I was insistent that we have a map and that we could drill down by parish or county because I wanted people to see the scale. Okay. So, again, as more newspapers are added to Ancestry, as more records are continue to be added again, right now it's just auctions and fugitive slave ads, but that's not all we captured. So the more you use it, you all, the more you engage with it, the more you save the records, the more you write about it, you share about it, you talk about it, the more you use it, the more it can be built out because the value is seen. So I need you to keep using it, okay? And to keep adding to it. So that way we can keep adding to it. All right. So again, one of my places I research, Wilkinson County, Mississippi. Okay. 2,248 mentions. Now, if you click on the county, it will pop up a box here that will list these 2,248 articles. And note this one, there's an enslaved person named Africa. Let's go ahead and click on this, okay, just so you can see what this is like. All right. Yes, map showed some records in Canada. Again, don't think it's because, oh, there was slavery in a place that nobody was talking about. No, it may be that they might have republished something that we were doing in the US in Canada. Okay. And there are some educators who are in here. And I really want to also point out if you are a teacher and you are teaching about enslavement or US history in any way, shape, or form, this is a great way to engage your students for them to be able to search around and see and drill down into specific locations. It may even be that you do that for the location that your school is in to help them understand and contextualize what was going on at that time. All right, so here we are with Africa, who is an enslaved person, 25 years age. She or he was a bounty. It was a bounty on a freedom seeker. What does that mean? That means that there was a ad placed for the return of Africa, and it was placed on actually, it was placed on August 25th of 1826. But the last time that Africa was seen was on August 9th of 1826. So we're talking nearly a month that Africa has been gone. Africa is a brick maker, and that this article was published in Natchez. So keep in mind, okay, the last place that Africa was seen was Woodville, Mississippi. The bounty ad was placed in Natchez, which is north of Woodville. Okay. And then here's the publication. Here are the names of enslavers who were mentioned. Now, there's also a list here for all the people who were mentioned. Okay. So you've got Mr. G. Rault, a John who's an enslaved person, a David who's an enslaved person, and an R.M. Gill. As I mentioned earlier, you can go to the thumbnail and it will pop open the actual newspaper page and it will isolate the article for you. Again, all you need is a free Ancestry account to get access to this. You do not need a subscription to newspapers.com or Ancestry for you to have access to this. It is free. All right. So again, as I mentioned, it's left in its original context on this page. Okay. Note what is above it and what is below it. You're going to see a lot of things. Here is a advertisement for Egyptian oats for sale. letters of administration for the orphans court at Pike County. So again, Pike County is in southern Mississippi. Natchez is on the Delta. Two different locations, but we're getting legal notices for Pike County. This is proving my point. We're seeing another letters of administration for Pike County. Then we're seeing a court case in Lawrence County. You all noticed it again. We haven't even brought up Natchez yet, other than the fact that it's like published there. If you don't know a name, how do you look for someone? Well, you could just look for the location, right? You see how when I came in here, I went to Woodville, Mississippi. If you remember, I clicked on the respective county that my family's from just to browse, just to see what's there. You may encounter, especially if you're looking for a slaveholder, there may be a slaveholder that you've been researching, but you're not entirely sure that they are your ancestor slaveholder. You can put their name into the search to find them. So right now I'm just browsing, okay? But what you can do also is you can come down. You might see somebody familiar on this page. You know this lady? I don't know if you know her. Or if you know this lady here too. You can slide down the bottom of the page and click this button to search the collection. So right now I'm just browsing. But if I wanted to do a direct search, and I will put this link in the chat so you can get here too, you can come to the collection page and do a search here and look at all the options that are available to you to search. Now, we go back to my browsing article, right? How do we get here? We are on the landing page. Nika went to Woodville, Mississippi, or Wilkinson County, Mississippi. I clicked on the county. I went to the first record. That got us to this page on Africa, who is here. Then I clicked the thumbnail, and then I got to the isolated article. And note, it's a $50 reward, absconded on the night of the 9th instant from the subscriber's plantation near Woodville. So we just got a whole lot of information. R.M. Gill is in Woodville. He is placing an ad for the return of 3 enslaved people. Africa is one of them. So if you go back to this page, you all remember we saw that John and David were also mentioned. It's because John, David, and Africa all absconded together, it looks like. Now, we've got Africa, black, 25 years of age, 6 feet high, very stout, large feet, abrupt and imprudent in speech, back much marked with the whip. Mm. Think about this, you all. Let's say R.M. Gill passes away, okay? And someone returns Africa. Okay, they get the $50 reward. R.M. Gill dies. His estate probates in Wilkinson County, Mississippi, and he has a will, but he does not necessarily name that his enslaved people are supposed to go to this person or that person in the will. So they make an inventory of his property, which includes land and all kinds of stuff, and they inventory the enslaved. And there is the name of Africa in that inventory. Usually all you're going to get about Africa in that inventory is his name, potentially his age, but there's almost always going to be a singular dollar value for Africa's life. You are not going to know that Africa is 6 feet tall. You're not going to know that Africa is very stout. You're not going to know that Africa has large feet. You're not going to know that how Africa allegedly speaks, or the fact that his body has been maimed by the institution of enslavement. You're not going to know that because the inventory typically does not capture that information. It literally is usually just a name, an age, and a dollar value. Keep going, okay? So then it says that he was lately owned by Giroux near Natchez. So here's the thing. Why did Africa abscond from R.M. Gill's plantation, even though he was lately owned by a Giroux near Natchez? To me, this is indicating that R.M. Gill maybe potentially, yes, thank you in the chat. Miss Judy, you are just cutting up. Yes, I'm high-fiving you from here, okay? Yes, I'm thinking Africa was hired out to R.M. Gill. likely because he maybe had a skilled trade. That often happened. Let's say R.M. Gill needed to construct something at his house. He needed a skilled carpenter. Giroux had one, and he hired Africa out to R.M. Gill for a time period. Or it's possible that Giroux may have been a relation to R.M. Gill. Let's say R.M. Gill's wife was a Giroux, and Africa was enslaved by R.M. Gill's wife's father or R.M. Gill's father-in-law, and R.M. Gill needed an additional enslaved person, so they sent Africa down from Natchez to Woodville. All of these scenarios are very possible. Um, that's yes, there's a great comment in the chat as well. Africa would have been a large man, an asset for breeding potentially. That's another possibility that they sent Africa down for him to have children with someone else and then create more wealth or more slave economy for these enslaving families. Or it could be that Mr. Giroux passed away. Maybe his estate was insolvent. The enslaved Africa was sold off at an auction, and that R.M. Gill purchased Africa. So he didn't, and if this was a recent death or recent auction, R.M. Gill may not have been familiar with Africa and the fact that Africa may have had a history of running away, which is likely indicated by the scarring on his body. All of this is possible. Okay, so we haven't even gone through the rest of the ad, but let's keep going. Let's keep breaking this down, okay? He had on ragged clothing. Look, and we're even learning about his clothes. Okay. He is a good brickmaker. You all, I didn't read this before we got in this session. I didn't read it at all. But didn't this just validate my point? He's a good brickmaker. This is validating my point that he was likely hired out to build or construct something. John, a slightly copper colored, about the same age, 5 feet 10 inches high, large wide eyes, long forehead, slow of speech, and stammers badly. Clothing cotton and linen with a blue broadcloth coat. We know what kind of jacket he had, you all. Oh, a pretty good carpenter. David, a very black and uncommonly likely, about 16 years of age, 5 feet 6 inches high, clothing cotton and linen with blue broadcloth coat, a first-rate house servant. The above reward for with reasonable expenses will be paid. Well, what's reasonable expenses? Mileage, if you had to feed them, if they were boarded in a jail. Those are what are considered reasonable expenses. So the $50 is above and beyond that. Will be paid for their apprehension if I get them. Thank you for the adjustment for inflation. Someone put in the chat. This is the most collaborative chat. Yes, chat. Come on, chat. You all are doing great today. $50 in 1826 would be $1,623 today. So it's like $1,600 that someone is paying to bring back these 3 people. So if we continue to break down the way that this looks on the page, again, you've got the article isolated. On the right-hand side are where you have all the details. So you can scroll down again to see that. And then if you want to save to Ancestry, you can save it to whoever maybe might be a potential article for you. Let me make sure I'm saving this. Again, I want to make sure I'm sharing my entire screen so you can kind of see what the options are here. So if you save to Ancestry, you can clip it, right? And it's got an AI tag that's there. And then if I save to Ancestry, it's going to bring up a box. And whatever the tree is, I can save this record to that, okay? So that's possible. Now, reunite with family, I'm pretty sure they prefer freedom. Absolutely, they probably do. And again, because of what they're talking about with Africa being so victimized in this enslavement system, it makes me think that this is not the first time he did this. I don't think it was. So again, this was a great first article, you all. Like literally, I just clicked on that. Let me check the chat to see if or the Q&A to see if there are any questions. You all are in here doing the most and the greatest. I'm so glad. All right, so let's move on. Let's search through this from the vantage point of the search page. Gender say unclear. So with this particular article, it doesn't say what It doesn't say if it's he or she, right? It doesn't give us that. Like it says very stout, like it says that it doesn't, because it's not directly laid out. Okay. Right. He had on ragged clothing. Is there anywhere to find a list of enslavers who were breeders? No, there isn't. Because again, just like how if people were on the Underground Railroad, we weren't supposed to know that they were, in all honesty, unless a slaveholder actually wrote, has correspondence between him and other people, or she and other people, where she is talking about these sorts of things, like breeding enslaved people, there isn't like a definitive list that I've ever seen. Um, right. He had on ragged clothing. Yeah. Well, yeah, there's that. Okay. That's an update. Let's report an issue. Enslavement article, right? You can go on and give feedback and make corrections. So because this says he, we could go in and add our respective things. Um, Anything about slaves of Native Americans. So if we're talking about that, we're talking Indian territory. So it's possible if you come over to the map, you can see if there's anything mentioned in Oklahoma. Um, no, there's something in Muskogee. So let's see, because that's Creek Nation. Let's see what's mentioned. All right, $50 reward stolen from the subscriber on Thursday night on the second instance. Very bright mulatto male child with dark eyes and hair, 6 months old. Oh my Lord. Whew. Supposed to have been taken by a deserted soldier by the name of John Wesley on Catamount Gibson, or yeah, Catamount Gibson. The said Jay Wesley is about 23 or 24 years of age, 5 feet 8.5 inches high, dark complexion, hazel eyes, and dark hair, rather impertinent, very shrewd in his remarks, and when closely pushed, has rather a downcast in his look. Very flippant with his tongue, tolerable education, and square built, steps quick and short, and when under the influence of liquor is very wry faced, had on, when deserted, soldier's clothing not properly known, but composed of cotton, has ink marks with an image of a woman on one of his arms. Oh, a tattoo. When is this? 1829? Okay. Supposed to be left together with letters of same, such as JWJ and others. He's fond of liquor and a great brag. P.S. There is a reward of $30 given by the United States for the delivery of the soldier. I will give $50. Charles Rogers. Whoa! Step back. Come on. Come on. I need you all to know I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation. My ancestors were enslaved by Cherokees. Thank you. Anyone who knows me knows this is my people. Charles Rogers is an uncle. Sure is. Sure is. Was not looking for this. So thank you, whoever suggested it. This is why we do this, isn't it? What's so funny is anyone who's ever researched or has sat in anything with me knows about my connections to the Cherokee Nation and to all of this. Charles Rogers, if this is 1829, this is the brother of my fourth great grandfather, who was Chief John Rogers, or it's his son. It's one of the two. And right, thank you, cousin Gwen. Right, her people too. So look at this. This is posted. This is an article that is in the newspaper in Arkansas, right? Because at this particular time, the Indian Territory is the Indian Territory. So the Cherokee Nation is its own country. And they were not citizens of the United States. They were citizens of the Cherokee Nation. So Charles Rogers is saying, as a slaveholder in the Cherokee Nation, that this soldier came and took an enslaved baby from his enslaved person. This is a trip. And yes, as someone said, Ike Rogers has surfaced himself. If I talk about any other branches of my family, I have an ancestor who always surfaces himself like, hey, pay attention to me. I don't know if anyone else has that, but I do. Um, and so this is, oh, now I'm super interested in this. Did they find the enslaved? The fact that this is published in Finley Springs, July 9th of 1829. You all have to remember this is prior to the forced removal. So he voluntarily removed, which makes sense because Chief John Rogers was an old settler chief of the Cherokee Nation. So this is all before all of that. Right. So many questions. Thank you, whoever suggested that, because I was not gonna go that direction, but you all said do. Wonder John fathered the baby. Listen, anything is possible in the Indian Territory. Okay. All right. So we've got like 12 minutes left. Let's talk about just searching through the collection through the ancestry side. Okay. Because we've done two really good browsings. We've got some great information from those. So let's see. We talked about let's you can use keywords. This is something I also want to point out to people. If you see this keyword field on Ancestry, really utilize that. What is keywords? Keywords are when something is indexed, you can search for it across all the respective areas, right? So if we go back to Africa, right? The last seen place that Africa was seen was in Woodville. But see, it doesn't say Woodville, Mississippi, because it's a literal transcription. It just says Woodville. So it's possible that it might make it a little bit more challenging to find. Now, thankfully, it was correlated to the correct location. But let's say there was something else mentioned in this, like $50. So if you go back to this, you've got recorded value that you could search there. But anything that is indexed that appears on this record page is searchable, and you can search by keyword. So if we took a word like, let's just say Cherokee, since we're talking about the Cherokee, and Ike Rogers clearly wants me to do something with that today. Um, Notice I put it in quotation marks, and I'm just putting in the word Cherokee. That's it. Okay. So it's going to pick it up, the word Cherokee, in name fields, in a number of things. So let's look and see what we find. Titus, look at this. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. What's this? Again, every time I come in here, I find something new. Didn't you remember me saying that? Okay, so Titus, enslaved person, an auction in Charleston, July 14th, 1808. Anyone knows what the significance of 1808 is? Use the chat. What is the significance of 1808 with regard to enslaved people? Why is 1808 important? Okay, someone says Revolutionary War. Yes, second answer is correct. External slave trade abolished, meaning that you can no longer bring in enslaved Africans in the United States after the ban of 1808. So we're looking at something that takes place right during that same year. Okay. So here we've got Titus. It says Indian of the Cherokee is his slaveholder. Boy, let me tell you this. You know, this is Ike Rogers today, because we never talk about enslavement with regard to the five tribes, and you all are getting it here. Um, Mr. Reese is an enslaver, and J.H. Stevens. Okay, so let's come into the article. Like, let's just see what we're doing. All right, city sheriff sale will be sold before the store of Joshua Brown, on the north side of the exchange on Thursday, the 11th day of August at 11 o'clock in the afternoon, agreeably to the ordinance of the City Council of Charleston, ratified on the 8th day of August, for the better regulation of the workhouse of Charleston, and agreeably to the 14th clause. A Negro fellow about 25 years of age named Titus says he belongs to an Indian of the Cherokee Nation. Whoa, but does not know the Indian's name. Now, why is that, you all? You have to think about this. It's not an anonymous enslaver. It's because they speak two different languages. Oh, this is so good. Part of me is like, people are saying, can we stay on for another hour? I wish. I only have 60 minutes. So, and if you're asking if this is going to be available later, yes, it is. There's going to be a recording. Okay. So you can go back and watch and hear everything that I've said and experience my joy more and more every each day, as much as you want to. So here Titus doesn't know his slaveholder's name because he was Cherokee and he likely didn't speak English. Wow. Okay. Stole from him a horse and came to Charleston. So Titus stole a horse from his Cherokee slaveholder, and that it says that he came to Charleston, that he was sold to the said Indian by Mr. Reese. So look at how we're getting. This is another thing that I love about these articles. Thank you, data science team and newspapers.com for doing this. Every time I go through this, I thank them. Look at how we're getting a chain of ownership, right? So a Mr. Reese sold Titus to an unnamed Cherokee, and Titus ran away, stole a horse from the unnamed Cherokee, and then came to Charleston. Now, one of the things you have to remember is if we're talking about enslavement in the Cherokee Nation, we're talking about Western South Carolina. We're not talking about Eastern South Carolina. Charleston is on the eastern part. So this means that Titus likely was coming a long way. Okay. And so, wow. Okay. So we'll keep going through. We just have a few minutes left. Um, and so he was sold to the said Indian by Mr. Reese of the High Hills of Santee, had on a striped jacket, a shirt, yellow trousers of homespun, is much bow-legged, full eyes, good countenance, has lost his front teeth above and below. The said Negro Titus was taken up as a runaway and placed in the workhouse and was advertised as such in the city paper on the 12th, 13th, and 14th of May, 1807. So we're talking a whole year earlier. That the said Negro having remained in the workhouse the time limited by law, no person claiming the same, he is now to be sold as a fugitive slave, as the law directs for his costs and charges of keeping. Here's what I want to also point out here. What can we do with this? Okay, because that's the number one question you all are probably asking. Well, we can try to identify Mr. Reese. We have a location. Notice it said of High Hills of Santee. We can look for a deed transaction that documents the sale of an enslaved person named Titus from Mr. Reese to blank of the Cherokee Nation. Because Mr. Reese is an American citizen, the Cherokee Indian is not a citizen of the Cherokee of America, and they would have to have the transaction documented somewhere likely. Okay, we're saying in the best case scenario. So that means wherever Santee is or wherever the high hills are, you check that county. Hopefully it's not burned. Okay, and you look for a Reese selling to a blank of the Cherokee Nation. That way we get the name of the Cherokee slaveholder. The other thing we have to weigh here is depending on how long Titus was with the Cherokee enslaver, it's possible he could have had a family there and left descendants who were literally forcibly removed during the Trail of Tears. And now they have an ancestor they don't even know a name for. How do you potentially find it? DNA. Boy, 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 boy. Wasn't this good today? This was great. All right. As always, love, love, love your suggestions. Keep them coming for webinars, future sessions. We're going to do another one about a month or so from now on the Freedmen's Bureau in particular. If you all want me to take another deep dive into articles of enslavement, maybe even as a part two of a jumping off point from like once you get the article, how do you find the people? How do you validate if this is your person or not? Please, please, please be sure to use the chat to indicate so. Be sure on your evaluation forms to include that information. Additionally, any other subjects that you want me to talk about here at the Ancestry Education spot, I want to make sure I get to the questions that are in the chat that haven't been answered. Um, does the chat record come with a presentation? Typically, no, it does not. Let's see. Part two will be great. Okay, wonderful. What's next? What do you do? What do you do after? I'm feeling that. So my people who help me, they want a part two. Um, and again, I just slid into this stuff, you all. I didn't do a pre-check or nothing. I just went in and just said, hey, like, let's go look. And we looked and you saw what happened. So takeaways for today. You can access newspapers.com's version of articles of enslavement. Again, if you go down to the logged in page, or just the main page at the bottom, you can get to articles of enslavement through the landing page, through Ancestry, as well as through the collection page that exists on Ancestry. The collection is free, free, free. The index is free. The access to the articles is free. All you need is a registered free account on Ancestry to access them. All right. I'm so glad there's really great context and comments that are coming in through the chat. How long will the collection on newspapers.com be free? It's free forever. It's not changing. Not to any of my knowledge. Nope. It's free. You all are saying you want a part two. Love that. And yeah, someone said that they're charged by my presentation. They're going to be on the computer all day. I love that. I always aim to please in that way. I want you to stay up all night long. If you do not stay up all night long after I've presented something or presented you with new information, I have not done my job. So if you stay up all night long, yes, that is exactly what I'm here for. The other thing I also want to remind you about is we talked about the newspapers.com Black History newspaper search. So please be sure to check that out. That's Black History Papers. Want to make sure I get this link correct. Yes, Black History Newspapers.newspapers.com. Make sure that you check that out as well. And yeah, I think that's about it for today. Thank you so much, you all, for joining me. Don't forget to check out the Chicago Defender, and hopefully we'll do a part two. Until we get that scheduled, join me for the Freedmen's Bureau. All right, have a great day.